Hey, welcome everyone. This is Brad Kenny with More Coaching, and I've got a special guest with us today on my speaker series on following your dreams. Today we have Tamsin Astor, who is a PhD. She's also a founder of Chief Habit Scientist of Yoga Brain Coaching. So Tamsin, welcome. You're also a speaker. You're on the speaker circuit, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've known each other how long?
About five
I was
years,
gonna
maybe.
say 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
So we have developed a really wonderful friendship, and I'm so grateful for you. So thank you for being part of this. You were one of the first people I thought of when I decided to do this. So it's an honor. So thank you. So like, let's just dive right in. My first question for you is, um, give me just a second here because I need to bring up the questions again. Um, What do you do and why is it important?
So I help people create the lives they really love in a two-pronged process by helping them figure out what their big, juicy life and business vision is, and then creating the daily habits to get them there, which includes a lot of mindset work to keep on track.
So tell me, why are habits so important?
Because about half of what we do every day is a habit. About 95% of our self-care actions are habits, and we make 35,000 decisions every day. So if you are not being efficient in creating habits that are serving your big ideal, the goals you want, the things that are important to you, you're going to be struck by decision overwhelm in the way that we are when we check out at the grocery store and we've just made 10,000 decisions about oat milk, rice milk, coconut milk, whole milk, lactate, right? And then we get to the checkout and it's like chocolate, 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 trashy magazines. And you're just like, decision fatigue. Okay, shit, I'll just throw it all in my cart, right? So one of the reasons for cultivating habits is that your brain is going to create habits anyway. Your brain is agnostic. It doesn't really care. Creating habits is efficient because it reduces the amount of energy output. So if you decide to sit back and let it take over, you'll probably create a lot of habits that won't serve you, as well as some that will serve you. So why not be intentional and create habits that serve you and your big, juicy purpose?
Wow, I love that. That's so true because um, Tony Robbins even has a thought process on habits. Our habits are who we become because
Mhm.
they're what we do every single day.
Yeah.
So I love that
Philosophers
you're
have been saying that for thousands of years. That's not Tony's idea.
okay. Okay, good.
I know the straight white men of this world like to think that they're the first person who come up with the idea. But no, philosophers have been saying this for centuries,
Okay, good.
if not millennia, sorry.
Good to know. No, that's good to know. So thank you for that. That is true. That is true. A lot of people like to think that they're the first. So,
Yeah.
so let's do this. Tell me a little bit about, um, since you are a master of habits, what are the golden rules that you live by in your daily life?
So I think one of the most important things is to remember that you shouldn't make assumptions about other people's experiences and what's going on in their lives, right? So, I might find it really easy to make this habit and follow through on a behavior, whereas you might not, right? And if I go around assuming that you're lazy or dumb or you don't care, that's not going to serve me or you in the world, right? So we all are incredibly unique. And one of the things that studying Ayurveda and coaching people for, nearly a decade has shown me is that everybody needs slightly different approaches. And if you are going to work really well with people and support people, is that you need to understand that and be comfortable with that, right? So not making assumptions is one. I think the other golden rules that I live by is if you can choose the kind path, do. And sometimes the kind path means cutting somebody out, means pushing somebody away, saying, I don't want you in my life anymore because I have certain values, I have certain beliefs, and it's more important for me to follow through on those and act on my boundaries around them so that I cultivate a deep sense of self-trust, i.e., this is something I believe in, hence I'm going to act this way, right? So being kind means being kind to yourself, but and the people around you. And sometimes that can mean taking action that might feel hurtful to some people.
I love that. We're taught that we should be nice to people, and I think that there's a confusion that sets in, that there's a disconnect between being kind to self, and kind to others. And we think that when we, like you mentioned, sometimes we need to cut people out,
Hmm.
and some people see that as, oh, I couldn't possibly do that because I would just destroy this other person. Well, what is it doing to you in the meantime?
Right. And I mean, and the other thing too is that if you are really driven to have impact and activate your purpose and do big things in the world, you have to remember the two things that are really fundamental with this. One is that about 95% of your success is driven by the communities you're operating within. So if you're operating in communities where everyone's like, I can't do that, this is too hard, life is shit, ugh, you're going to be sucked into that energy because, as Jim Rohn says, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, let's dive into that a little bit. What about people that you mentioned self-trust, right? And then you mentioned also the communities that we're operating in. So what about people who have a challenge with trust, and they think that they can do it all on their own? What would you say to people that have that?
So, having been somebody that has always been incredibly independent and freedom oriented, um, when life falls apart, which I hope to God it doesn't for you, but if it does, you know that doing it all on your own will not always work, right? We are social beings. We are designed from an evolutionary perspective to live together. And if you look at, Margaret Mead was one of the, earliest anthropologists, and she said, the sign of human evolution, right, and what marks us as being distinguished from other species, although you occasionally do see it in like the chimp species too, what I'm about to say, is a healed femur, right? Because if somebody breaks their femur, they can't walk. The femur is the thigh bone, right? Which means they can't run away from the woolly mammoth. It means they can't hunt and gather food. It means they can't get to the bathroom. They can't take care of themselves. So a sign of a socially evolved society is a healed femur, right? And that is a marker of people of human evolution, right? So we live in social communities. So this idea that you can do it all your own, it doesn't work in the long term.
Okay. What do you think are some of the consequences of people trying to do it on their own?
So I think it can have two consequences. One is like you can feel incredibly empowered, right? When you achieve shit on your own, you're like, yay, me. But then you can take a step back and look at the broader thing and go, well, maybe you achieved that because you're white. Maybe you achieved that because you have money. Maybe you achieved that because you grew up in a certain educational class and gave you access to certain privileges and certain connections. So even if you think you did the whole fucking thing on your own, you probably didn't, right? If you take a moment to step back and look at that, right? But it can give you a sense of like, woohoo, look at me, which is a good thing, in terms of cultivating self-esteem and self-efficacy, right? However, right, working in collaboration and community and cultivating vulnerability, cultivating connection can only make the world a better place.
Okay, I love that. So thank you. All right, so we're talking about creating something and achieving goals, which I think is a perfect segue into our next segment, our next question, and that is, what do you do when your plans go sideways, or life, as I like to say?
Right. When the proverbial hits the fan, right. Um, so I think one of the first things you have to do is you have to kind of stop and pause and go, well, like that was not part of the plan,
Didn't
right?
see that coming.
Yeah, right. So partly you have to stop, right? And then I think there are the sort of, I like to think of it as like the internal and the external approaches to moving through this, right? So the internal approach is, you journal, you go to your therapist, you go to your coach, you go to your friend community, and you go like, what got me here, right? What decisions did I take or not take? What things did I not look out for? What things that, what was my role in this? Right? So that kind of internal aspect of what got you there, right? And sometimes that internal aspect, like it's like the pandemic, like you didn't have anything to do with it, right? But a lot of the time you did, right? So starting on that side too. And then the second is looking at the external, like what was going on around me? What were the situations I was in? What relationships were in? What work was I doing? Who was I spending time with? And looking at kind of all of the stuff on the sort of the outside and kind of getting a sense of, how did these two play a part in the proverbial hitting the fan, so that you can step back and learn from the experience, right? Oh shit, I got here because I let my guard down because this person introduced me to that person and I trusted person A, right? So I implicitly trusted person B because person A has always felt to me like a trustworthy person. I let my guard down. Ding, 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 right? So you kind of
Mhm.
do that sort of evaluation of what got you there. The second thing I think that's really important is not to live in blame, not to be looking back now. So now you've just gone, okay, this is probably how I got here. But then if you spend the rest of the time looking at it going, and this person's a fucking bitch, and this person, and if you live in anger and kind of rear view mirror living, right, where you're always looking back at what went wrong, you won't move forward, right? So a big part of it is the process of learning to let shit go, learning to let it go. And if you can't learn to let it go, you're going to really struggle to move forward. And one of the best ways for learning to let go is meditation, because meditation is a daily practice of letting the thoughts go and coming back to the breath, letting the thoughts go and coming back, letting the bark of the dog go and coming back to the breath, letting the doorbell go and coming back, right? So having a practice of letting go. And then step 3 is being intentional about where you're going to go next. Like, okay, well, that didn't go to fucking plan. How am I going to create the plan that I do desire and start making some steps towards it?
Okay. So fail forward, basically.
Oh yeah, baby. Fail forward. Got to do it. Because you don't create anything if you don't try, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was probably one of my biggest lessons in my process, and still is embracing the failure and taking the lesson from that.
Mm-hmm.
And what can I do differently moving forward? And like you said, the self-reflection, how did I get here? What were the
Mm-hmm.
factors? How do I course correct from
Mm-hmm.
here?
Absolutely.
All right, so here's a great question. And I'm so glad that you chose it. What turns you on?
Connection. Connection with my purpose, connection with people who inspire me, who push me, who challenge me, who reflect back to me a world that I want to create. Um, Physical exertion turns me on, like bicycling down a hill with like the wind in my face and the sun on my arms, diving into a wave, jumping off a board into the sea, like kicking off the top of a mountain on a black run, and you've got a fuck ton of moguls to go past, right? Like physical exertion, that totally turns me on. It's like the sensory experience. And then also just delicious food and music and like just all of the kind of the sense stuff, right? Traveling, new experience. But for me it's really about connection, right? Am I connecting with my taste buds? Am I connecting with my body? Am I connecting with people's minds, right? Like I love the idea that I read in Vishen Lakiani's book, The Buddha and the Badass, where he talks about idea sex, right? And like, can you have those like really juicy conversations where you lose track of time and you get so excited by this conversation you're having and where it's going and what it means and how you can apply it, and right? So yeah, that's me. Connection.
That's so awesome. I was just thinking, like, what would be hell for Tamsin? And I'm thinking sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah. Totally, but also probably would be good for me because it would heighten my awareness. A little bit like, when you do a silent meditation retreat, you come out and you choose your words carefully after you haven't been able to use words for 10 days.
Have you done one of those?
5 days is the longest I've done.
Okay. So was it supposed to be 10, but you cracked at
No, no,
5?
5 is the longest I've done. I'm looking at a 10-day for the summer, which is what I'm looking forward to.
Okay. And there's absolutely 0 words.
0 words, exactly.
But you're doing other types of communication.
No, you're meditating in your room, you're going to meditate, seated meditation, you're eating, you're sleeping, all of that's all happening quietly. Nothing.
But you can't write messages down or anything like that?
I think in some of them you can. The two that I'm looking at like have varied, tools on that. Obviously, like, if you're like bleeding to death, you're gonna,
Right.
use your words, right? But the point is
Right.
that when you're standing in line to get your food, you're not, So, how are you feeling about the weather in this teacher?
Gotcha.
You're just.
You're just present. Okay. All right. So my last question, and I just want to say thank you again for being here. I want to make sure that if you have anything that you'd like to offer our listeners or viewers, whether it's if you want to promote your book, if you want to promote your availability for speaking, or if you want to have a coffee call, I want to make sure that people are aware of how to get a hold of you. So make sure you make that announcement and send me the information so I can post it in the comments as well.
Mhm. Great. Okay.
So the last question is, why is it important to have dreams?
It's important to have dreams because you shouldn't limit yourself based on what you've done, right? We limit ourselves based on what we see around us, the people in our lives, our parents, our siblings, our community, and we think that's all there is, right? So the reason I think it's really important to dream is that that's how big, exciting things get created in the world. That's how innovation happens. That's how, new ways of thinking about how we can relate to each other happen, new ways of supporting each other, technologies, all of it. So if you don't give yourself the space to dream, those things won't happen. And I think one of the hardest things about the world we live in right now is we're all attached to our technology. And the problem with that is that we're incredibly overscheduled and we don't give ourselves space to think, space and time to process. And, when you look at the people who created amazing things, so like Einstein, for example, when he got stuck on a problem, he would play the violin. And the reason he'd play the violin was that it was a sort of like taking a walk or swimming in the sea or hanging out with your pet. There's something sort of soothing and repetitive about it, right? And it allows a certain mind wandering to happen. And when you have that mind wandering, that's often where these spectacular things occur.
Absolutely. Would you say that playing the violin may have been sort of a meditation for Einstein?
Yes, although I'm quite clear that mindful activity is different from meditation because for me, my understanding, and I'm trained in the Tibetan Buddhist lineage, and I took refuge as a Buddhist 9 years ago nearly, um, is that meditation is simply working with your mind. And that playing the piano, playing with your dog, walking, swimming, cooking can all be done in a mindful way and can be done mindfully. But because you're actually doing something else, you're not meditating, you're not just working with your mind.
Got it. Okay. Well, I have had the best time talking with you. And so, if you have anything you'd like to offer the viewers, please go ahead and mention it here, and then we'll make sure that it's in writing for the comments as well.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Brad. I have a Facebook group, Fabulous Habits for Conscious Leading, which I would love for you to join. I have great conversations in there. I go live every week. I've got lots of resources. All the podcasts I've been interviewed, YouTube, everything's in there. So you can binge on me and my ideas if that turns you on. And yes, thank you for the suggestion for speaking. I am a paid motivational speaker and workshop leader. So reach out to me if you like what you hear, like what you see, and I would love to get in touch with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tamsin. You're amazing. I'm so grateful for you, and really, really appreciate you again taking the time for me and everybody interested in picking up their dreams, dusting them off, and realizing that it's possible. And like you said, with the right habits and the right community, anything is possible.
Thank you so much, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
All right, I love you, my dear. All right, we'll talk with you soon. Okay,
Sounds great.
take care.